hottest that it could be in the United States this week in Vegas. It's a huge party. It's a huge party in the desert. Literally, this town, Vegas, is taken over for pretty much the entire week by hackers.
I think cybersecurity is a little bit like, what we call in the US the Wild West. It's really a bunch of independent gunslingers.
At the height of summer, tens of thousands of the world's top hackers have converged on Las Vegas.
What is the Cyber Grand Challenge? It is the world's first all-machine hacking tournament.
These hackers are here to learn new ways to attack computer networks in order to protect them.
Hacking is a crime in most countries. However, there are folks who call themselves ethical hackers or white hat hackers, etc. And these are folks I like to describe as good people who know how to do bad things. So you wouldn't consider a locksmith to be a burglar, but a locksmith knows how to pick locks. Hackers who come to these conferences and learn how to pick digital locks are essentially the same idea.
Track 1 is on the left, track 2 is on the right, track 3 is down the hall.
I'm here at one of the world's biggest hacking conferences in Las Vegas. Everybody's told me to make sure that my Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are turned off. A lot of people say just turn off your phone altogether because phones and laptops are routinely hacked here. I'm going to go and check it out.
Bribe today is $15 per judge, 2 EFF.
In a world of internet-connected devices, almost everything is vulnerable to hacking, from drones to fridges, even cars.
They found that you could wirelessly get into a vehicle. It took them a year and a half to be able to do that research and be able to figure out, that they could get in that car.
This is your door handle right here.
Despite the warnings, a few people at the conference used Wi-Fi to go online. Their logins and passwords were plucked from midair and put on public display. They call it the wall of sheep because most of us have been blindly led to trust technology.
I mean, obviously, technology is penetrating more and more of our lives. My computer is, of course, something I want to protect, but my car is also running a computer. So we look at cybersecurity from the traditional, my laptop level, to the personal level. I want to protect my memories, to really the safety critical, such as cars, vehicles, and airplanes. And it's just a growing domain. We should all be thinking about it.
I'd like to introduce everyone to a special part of this Cyber Grand Challenge.
There are so many hackers who have poured into Las Vegas for the DEF CON conference, but there's only a few at the cutting edge.
So here in Vegas, we have over 10,000 people at DEF CON. But if you really want to know who the elite are, you have to go into a back room in DEF CON, and there you're going to find about a dozen teams playing against each other, no more than 100 people. And these are really the world's cyber elite. So many people think, there's this many hackers in the world, but really there's this many who are really making a difference day to day.
Teams of the best hackers from around the world are pitting their skills against each other.
The aim is to break into other people's services to capture the flag. Given that, we also get to patch ours, so to fix the vulnerabilities in ours, while also trying to hack into theirs.
They're all trying to crack the codes that drive each other's computers.
I think, like in any field, if you're not following the trends, if you're not looking to the future, you're going to be behind. And if in cyber you're putting your head in the sand, you're going to be a victim. People are going to come after you.
Challenges like these draw out skills that are highly sought after, including by the government.
The U.S. government, basically said, we're in, just like everyone else on the internet, we're being attacked. Our methods of securing everything have not been adequate. We need to reach out to the private industry and find out what industry best practices are working for them and actually create more programs that can rapidly bring in the best and the brightest.
It's great to be here this afternoon with a few of the dedicated people who defend our networks every day, as well as some of the technologists and hackers who've contributed to our defense mission by taking part in Hack the Pentagon.
These are the winners of a Department of Defense competition. Their challenge was to hack the US military's headquarters at the Pentagon.
That was the very first time the United States government allowed people to hack them legally and also paid money to them. The Secretary of Defense congratulated these hackers, handed them challenge coins, basically wanted to talk to them because he's in a position where he's realized that we can't actually recruit through the normal methods anymore. We have to reach out to this population, and we have to make it something where they are welcome in places like the Pentagon.
Let me be very, very candid, all right? I was the director of the National Security Agency here in America, the American equivalent of ASD, right? The last 15 years have been the golden age of electronic surveillance.
Michael Hayden has been the head of both the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency in the United States. He staffed the US government's elite cyber unit from the ranks of the hacking community.
The most sophisticated office at the National Security Agency is TAO, Tailored Access Operations. It's our hackers, it's our cyber espionage folks, all right? We began to rapidly expand that while I was director, about 2002, all right? We're bringing on a whole bunch of very young people. And we were taking those young people because they had the talent, and we're putting them on our most sensitive operational activities.
In his youth, Kevin Mitnick was one of the United States' most infamous hackers. He spent years hacking major corporations, including Nokia and Motorola, until the FBI caught up with him.
Eventually, I pushed the envelope so far that I ended up in federal prison for 5 years. In fact, 1 year was in solitary confinement because a federal prosecutor told a judge that not only do they have to hold me in prison because I'm such a danger to national security, but they have to keep me away from the phone. And the judge was like a little bit confused, like, why? And the prosecutor went on to say, if we let Mr. Mitnick near a phone, he could whistle into the phone and launch an ICBM.
Today, Kevin Mitnick is a cyber security advisor to top companies. We met him in Melbourne. He says we don't realise how vulnerable we all are. He's about to demonstrate just how easy it is to hack into my bank account. In this alleyway, he's just set up a fake Wi-Fi network.
Linton sitting over there thinks he's really connecting to Telstra Air, but what he doesn't know, he's connecting to my fake access point. And what we're going to do is we're going to take over his computer.
As soon as I logged into it, he was able to record all of my keystrokes, including my banking password.
And then what I'm going to be able to do is steal his passwords. I'm going to be able to inject fake updates. So once he installs them, we gain full control of his computer system and he'll never know the better. Back when I started hacking as a black hat, you didn't have the tools that you have today. Basically, you had to develop your own exploits. Systems were not as secure. The reason being there was a much lower level of a security awareness. But now we fast forward to today, and you have tons of tools that a junior high schooler could download and use to exploit systems.
A similar Wi-Fi scam was behind a fraud shown on this CCTV footage from inside a Westpac branch in Sydney. It was recorded in December 2014 and shows two men setting up a bank account. In fact, they're members of a criminal syndicate, and the account was opened with a stolen identity.
So that's both of them. They're actually producing the full driver's license, which is pretty good, high quality.
The syndicate they're working for had obtained people's personal details after they hacked their phones through a free Wi-Fi network.
We've seen they were able to convince the bank that he was the actual legitimate account holder.
New South Wales Police Detective Superintendent Arthur Katsagiannis oversaw the strike force that busted open the crime ring.
Yeah, it's a good shot. I mean, it shows you how calm they are. Some of the techniques and methodology used by this particular criminal syndicate are the use of malicious software, which is placed on a person's computer to take their personal details and account details. They then port the individual's phone without the victim's phone without their knowledge to bypass the two-factor verification, and then they recruit mules. Most of them are international students or foreign individuals who go to the banks, open up fraudulent bank accounts there, take the identity of the victim, and then withdraw all their money over a period of days. It's as simple as that.
The police have arrested almost 50 people in connection with the crime after they stole more than $6 million.
Cybercrime poses one of the greatest challenges to law enforcement this century. No longer do we have that individual who carries a firearm and wears a balaclava to disguise their identity. It's a lot more profitable and a lot easier for someone to pick up a laptop, sit in the comfort of the lounge room behind the anonymity of the internet and take the bank for millions of dollars.
Criminals recognised cyber was a great frontier in the very early 2000s. So they've been going at this for 13 or 14 years. What they've realised is that the cost of entry is very low. The likelihood of being caught is also still low. And they only need to steal a small amount from lots of people to aggregate a large amount of money.
Look, here's what's happened over the past 10 or 15 years. All of us, myself included, businesses, governments, we've taken things that we at least would keep in a desk drawer or a wallet, sometimes even in a safe, and we've decided to put them in our phones or to put them in something called the cloud. And I think we did it indifferent to the dangers we were creating for ourselves by putting our precious information, whether it was personal or governmental, in locations that were not nearly as safe as they were when we kept them in the physical domain.
What many computer users don't know is that any device linked to the internet is potentially vulnerable. A few weeks ago, Four Corners located a website that identified thousands of private hard drives that are connected to the web. About 400 of these are owned by businesses and individuals in Australia. But most of them are not secure, and their files are sitting open on the internet. Here, I'm looking at the files owned by one man in northwest Sydney. I can see all the files in his hard drive, from insurance documents to information about his business clients. Hello, Matthew. It's Linton Besser from Four Corners. How are you? We contacted the owner of the hard drive, Matthew Edwards, who's a telecommunications engineer. Okay, we'll jump in the car and see you shortly. Cheers. So this is the home office here?
Yes, absolutely.
Matthew Edwards was disturbed by what we told him about the hard drive he was using to store his information. So when we contacted you, Matthew, what went through your mind?
I wasn't very happy. I was unbelievable. Initially I was thinking, oh, this has got to be some sort of scam.
And what kind of sensitive information was on there?
My personal data, and it's, as I said, it's my, initially it's all the quotations I've just been doing, and I'm starting a new business. I didn't want that out.
It shows how simple it can be to enable the cybersecurity threat. And by putting infrastructure or computers in your home without giving any thoughts to the cybersecurity threat.
And they've been horrified when we've called them. I mean, they've had no idea.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the power of what the internet can enable is great for business and great for enterprise. Unfortunately, it's equally as good for the bad guys. Okay, so we've got the attacker one. Yep. Came through here, and this is obviously the first campaign. Came through and created an incident.
Former Australian government cyber security official Tim Wellsmore says it's not just individuals whose secrets are vulnerable to others. In fact, governments and businesses in Australia are attacked and compromised all the time. Hacking happens so often, there is a marketplace in the dark corners of the internet where access to hacked computer servers is bought and sold.
On this one, we also had another victim, and the first compromise occurred on this system. You could buy one of those compromised servers for anywhere between $5 to $10 to $20, depending on where it was and what type of system it was.
I mean, that's just staggering, isn't it?
It's a market-driven economy, unfortunately, and the price of a compromised system of $5 probably just shows you exactly how far down the road we are of the cybersecurity story.
This year, security firm Kaspersky released a report which said a huge volume of computer servers around the world had been hacked, their logins and passwords put up for sale online. Kaspersky then published a separate list, identifying 170,000 computers which may also be suspect, including thousands in Australia owned by companies, local councils, law firms and schools. Computers like these can be used to launch what's called denial of service attacks, where a website is flooded by artificial traffic, much like jamming a switchboard.
There's a lot of computers for sale on the dark web that have actually been hacked and compromised and are sitting there waiting to be used for attacks. That marketplace exists, and there's quite a strong marketplace, because for these attacks to occur, they don't want to use their own computers to launch them. They want to use somebody else's that doesn't look like an attacker. And unfortunately, there are thousands of these servers or computers out there for sale that can be used for these attacks.
I would like to firstly apologise again to the inconvenience that has been caused for many Australians.
Australian institutions have shown themselves to be woefully unprepared for even basic cybersecurity threats. The recent census debacle was a case in point.
The ABS took the early prudent precaution of taking the system down around 7:45 last night to be assured of the integrity of the data.
Facing a low-level denial of service attack by an unidentified attacker, the ABS panicked and took the census offline.
The integrity of the census...
That attack, the denial of service attack, is easily predictable and certainly was not of a scale or sophistication that should have caused any significant problems. That, combined with a series of events, at least as we know them at the moment, that end on end led to the ABS taking the site down, should have been predicted and prevented.
Alistair McGibbon is the Prime Minister's cybersecurity advisor. His job is to roll out an ambitious cybersecurity strategy designed to protect Australia from the growing threats online.
The Commonwealth Government takes these matters very seriously. The launch of the cybersecurity strategy in April is the start of what I would say of the next wave of cybersecurity capabilities in this country, a step change.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much, Jennifer. My friends, the internet is the most transformative piece of infrastructure ever created.
When the Prime Minister launched the strategy in April, he made an extraordinary admission.
The Bureau of Meteorology suffered a significant cyber intrusion, which was first discovered early last year. And the Department of
It was the first time there was official acknowledgement that a critical Australian government agency had been penetrated by a sophisticated cyber attack. The government didn't say it publicly, but intelligence sources have confirmed to Four Corners that China was behind the attack, something Beijing continues to deny. Four Corners has been told that China's true targets may have been the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation, which provides satellite imagery for sensitive defence operations, and a high-tech radar system operated by the Air Force.
I'd say to you that people who compromise systems will usually try to find a way to move laterally through it. If that means through a third party, that's what they'll try to do.
And is that the case that we saw with the Bureau?
I don't know. I don't know what the intention of the people that compromised the system was.
There is a lot of assets in the Australian government that would be of interest to China and other nation-state actors, specifically why the Bureau of Meteorology, or as you speculated, the AGO was actually was a target. There's obviously some sensitive intelligence information within some of these organisations that would obviously be to give advantage to other nations to understand those.
Australia and the United States and other friendly, similar nations around the world need to protect their data, because what you just described, to my mind, fits the definition of legitimate state espionage. So look, we have every right to complain about espionage. We criminalize it when our own citizens do it, all right? But it is what adult nation states do to one another.
There have been many other penetrations of Australian government networks than have been disclosed publicly. Four Corners has been told of significant cyber attacks against Austrade, and we've also established that several years ago, the computer networks belonging to the Defence Science Technology Organisation suffered a major breach at the hands of Chinese intelligence.
It would seem appropriate that nation states would be interested in the defence science area, and of course the defence science area is aware of needing to keep itself secure. The Australian government knows that it needs to protect these things. It knows that it can't ever be static in how it does those things, and it will continue to strive to stay ahead of what the threat environment is.
It's here at the Australian Signals Directorate that the work of protecting vital national assets is done.
We recognise.
But what really troubles people like Alistair McGibbon is when other countries use their powers against individuals and businesses.
We believe in a free and open internet, and that means that you don't use those types of, in a way, calling it a weaponised capability against other people's intellectual property or to their economic well-being.
But this is something that China has been doing over and again to businesses in Australia for some time, isn't it?
Oh, it's not useful for us to talk about any particular nation state.
Newsat was once Australia's biggest specialist satellite company until it was sold off last year. It carried sensitive communications for resources companies as well as the military. But its jewel was a 5-ton state-of-the-art satellite called Jabiru-1, which it promised to launch over Asia. The company's former IT manager, Daryl Peter, said the Lockheed Martin-designed satellite made it a target for Chinese spies.
Their ambitious plan to build a satellite, and of course the confidential design plans for it made us a very attractive target. You know, there are certain countries where they may not have those available, so getting those confidential designs would be very beneficial for them.
In a meeting called by the Australian Signals Directorate, Daryl Peter was told the company had been seriously infiltrated by foreign hackers.
They'd been inside our network for a long period, so maybe about 2 years. And the way it was described to us was they're so deep in our network that it's like as if someone is sitting over our shoulder for anything we did. So Newsat had been hacked, and not just by, you know, teenagers in a basement or anything like that. Whoever was hacking us was very well funded, very professional, very serious hackers.
Newsat's former Chief Financial Officer, Michael Hewins, said the company's IT staff were told Newsat's computers had been so compromised they would not be allowed to launch the satellite until major changes were made.
They were told something on the order, and I wouldn't say it's a direct quote, but that we were a joke, that we hadn't taken seriously what we'd been told, and that our network was, as far as they can see, the most corrupted they'd seen, period.
Yeah, they actually said to us that we were the worst, which was, given that the organisation it is, it was very scary for me, of course, because you know, all the government organisations that, of course, sometimes do get hacked, and for a small company like Newsat to be the worst they'd seen, it made me feel like fixing that would be quite an issue.
The process was pretty nerve-wracking, what was going on, because every day was something new we were finding out. And it's one of those things, you know, if you can't see the problem and suddenly you open the door and you go, oh my God, it's like Pandora's box.
As Daryl Peter investigated, with the assistance of Australia's cyber spy agency, it became clear to him who was behind the attack.
With the more specialised security tools that we had, we were able to determine the location of the attacks, and majority of them were coming from China.
And what did ASD say about all of that?
Well, look, I mean, they thought that it was, of course, very interesting, but it wasn't too surprising.
Why not surprising?
China tend to target more government organisations or organisations in that sort of space. I mean, there's been quite a number of publicised hacks by China.
Where I'm really concerned, and where I think Australians should be really concerned, is the Chinese not attacking the Australian government or the American government. Our government should be able to defend themselves. Again, not shame on China, shame on us. They steal our secrets. It's a really unfair fight, though, if a nation state like China attacks private enterprise in Australia. Again, not for legitimate state espionage purposes, but for industrial and commercial advantage.
I mean, given we were up against, China, state-sponsored, a lot of money behind them and resources, and we were only a very small IT team, it certainly wasn't a fair fight for us. I mean, we didn't have any specialised security skills.
One of the cyber world's foremost experts, Washington-based Dmitry Alperovich, says Australia has not done enough to warn industry about online threats.
The reality is that the Australian government is very well aware of these activities, but they have not really come out and publicly acknowledged it. They have not done a good job, in my opinion, educating the public about this threat. And as a result, there's a sense of complacency oftentimes amongst industry because they don't appreciate that even in Australia you can be targeted. And China happens to be your biggest trading partner. There's a lot of reasons why they would be hacking into your industry to try to steal intellectual property, try to get an advantage in trade negotiations, and it's happening very, very often, and very little has been done about it.
You must remember that it was only in April this year that the Prime Minister announced the compromises of the Bureau of Meteorology and of the Parliament House network. They're pretty remarkably big steps forward in what was otherwise a very, very closed community. You have to give us some time as we work through what can be said, how it can be said, to increase the level of engagement.
In April, Dmitry Alperovich's firm got a call from the US Democratic Party, concerned their computer networks may have been hacked. His staff found something alarming.
He said, basically, take a look at this. This is very interesting. I started looking at the evidence and realized right away that there's complete certainty in what we're seeing. We found a couple of big whales here, and it's actors that we affiliate with the Russian intelligence services, and one of them specifically with the GRU, the military intelligence agency of Russia.
What they discovered was a spying campaign against a major US political party.
The last time there was a major bugging operation that targeted the US Democrats was in 1972, when the Watergate building behind me was broken into. Now, in 2016, the Democrats have been infiltrated again.
The Russians, and according to the reporting, who did this hacking were most likely in the employment of the Russian government.
US Democrats are in disarray after a damaging email leak.
3 months after the hack was discovered, embarrassing internal emails from within the US Democrats turned up on WikiLeaks and led to the resignation of 2 senior party officials.
If this were done by the Russian security services, and I think there's a body of evidence that that's probably true, I'm not so sure that the inner workings of a powerful American political party is an illegitimate target for Russian espionage, all right? So let me just make that very clear. Now, what really makes this interesting is that it appears the Russians didn't stop at espionage. They've taken the information, and here's the phrase I would like to share with you. They've weaponized the data, made it public through WikiLeaks in order to do something with the American political process. That's really interesting. That's really new.
It is the United States, however, not Russia, that's been blamed for the most destructive cyber weapon to have ever been deployed. Stuxnet was a highly dangerous piece of code launched a decade ago against Iran's nuclear enrichment program. By secretly causing the centrifuges at the Natanz facility to spin out of control, hundreds were destroyed before their operators knew anything was wrong.
Well, Stuxnet was a piece of malicious code allegedly developed by the United States in cooperation with Israel. A piece of government malware that was targeting the Iranian centrifuges. The impact was damage, physical damage from that attack.
Stuxnet marked the beginning of the cyber wars of the future.
Some of the literature claims this is the first real documented evidence of cyber warfare. People will claim that was cyber warfare. So once you have an example, it can be replicated. Other people will copy it.
A nation state had just used a weapon comprised of ones and zeros during a time of peace to destroy what another nation could only describe as critical infrastructure. Now, even I, with my background and looking upon the destruction as an unalloyed good, even I recognize that's a really big deal. That, I've used the phrase in the past, that's a legion crossing the Rubicon. That's a legion on the other side of the river now. That's the first time that's ever happened in human history, and our species doesn't have a history of putting such weapons back into the sheath after they've been used once.
And just for the record, General Hayden, was Stuxnet an operation of the US government?
Yeah, what I say in response to those kinds of questions is, given my background, it would be irresponsible of somebody in my background to even speculate as to who may have been up to that.
Cyber weapons like Stuxnet rely on software flaws or vulnerabilities that hackers use to get into sensitive systems. They're known in the jargon of the hacking world as zero-day exploits.
A zero-day is a vulnerability that has been identified that nobody knows about, right? Maybe another researcher could have stumbled across the same security flaw, but a zero-day is something that hasn't been reported to the manufacturer, be it Microsoft, Apple, Cisco, or any of the major manufacturers out there, and then it allows the attacker to continually leverage that zero-day to compromise systems.
A zero-day is one of those vulnerabilities that have been discovered but haven't been disclosed to the public or to the software developer. So therefore it can be used in a weaponised sense to actually then to be used to attack that system and gain a foothold on that system. Zero days are commonplace in this type of industry, and they're obviously quite valuable assets.
Incredibly, there are people who buy and sell zero-day exploits to companies and governments across the world.
The trade in software vulnerabilities is actually a pretty murky marketplace, with many of the transactions happening underground. Some say it's the arms race of the 21st century, but it's an arms race where no one really knows who is buying these exploits and what they're using them for.
I've seen some prices on the internet which are quite significant. You know, you can pay sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, over $1 million if, you know, I don't know if people actually pay those prices, but I've certainly seen them on the internet and on the dark net. So obviously, if it's a market demand and that's the price they're putting on them, somebody must be paying for them.
This company, Zerodium, publishes its price list for zero-day exploits online. Those which allow you to hack into an Apple iOS system used by iPhones are worth $500,000.
Basically, what a zero-day broker does is when researchers find vulnerabilities in systems that haven't been reported, what they do is they broker a deal between the individual that found it and a party, usually a government agency, that wants to purchase it.
High-profile hacker Kevin Mitnick is one of these brokers, but he doesn't want to talk about it.
I noticed on your website you said you sell them to countries and corporations.
I can't discuss it, sorry.
How can you be certain you know who you're selling them to?
Well, I can't discuss the program.
Can you sit here today and say you're 100% confident that nothing you have sold has gone into the wrong hands?
I could say I'm 100% confident that I can't discuss the program with you.
Now, while cybersecurity measures sit at the forefront of our response to cyber threats, defensive measures may not always be adequate.
It was only a few months ago that the public was told for the first time that Australia was in the business of cyber warfare.
An offensive cyber capability, housed in the Australian Signals Directorate, provides another option for government to respond.
This offensive cyber capability includes developing zero-day exploits to be used against overseas targets by Australia's Electronic Spy Agency.
in terms of offensive capabilities, they will be very, very specific and very, very tailored activities. We're not talking mass vulnerability that will infect all of us and that the Australian government sits on. That would be improper and isn't done, nor should it be done.
Just like any country, any advanced country, we have to assume that they're developing capabilities in order to both defend themselves and take offensive actions should it be needed in cyberspace. And really, most modern countries now are treating cyberspace as another military domain, in addition to land, air, and sea.
Okay, let's start looking at these targets. What have we got?
2 targets, water tower and the power station.
To prepare for the cyber domain, this is where Australia's 21st century soldiers train. A secure facility at the Australian Defence Force Academy in Canberra.
Initiating scan. Scan complete, chopping across the database.
So we've got some options on that first host. Let's start there. Pete, that first host on the perimeter. Okay, let's try and get into that. Okay, so once we've got this foothold, I want you to do a scan on the DMZ for the pivot. So let's start that scan again.
Initiating scan.
Great, let's get into it.
2 rival teams are competing. One's on attack, trying to turn off the power across this imaginary city. The other team is trying to defend the city.
Target 1's offline.
Good job, keep watching it. Okay, exploit 6. Right, okay, take out the power grid. Okay, red team, power grid's going down. What I want you to look at now, do as much damage as you can. We probably don't have very long till we get kicked out. Okay, we're starting to lose this one.
We're teaching them how to defend critical infrastructure networks, and we actually teach them what the bad guys might do in offensive warfare against us, so that when they go to work, they will be able to recognise an attack and to do something about it.
The tower should be overflowing.
Good job, Pete.
The red team manages to flood the water tower and take out the power grid.
Okay, that's it, we're out. Good work, guys. Great job.
It's not as far-fetched as it might seem. In December last year, a major power outage in western Ukraine was attributed to a cyber attack launched from Russia.
In the industrial age, electrical power grids were always considered a legitimate military target. Right? So in World War II, we bombed and destroyed the electrical infrastructure of our enemies. Now we have the ability, through a cyber attack, to just shut the grid down.
We've certainly seen essential utilities targeted in other parts of the world, successfully so, and so we'd be churlish to think that that couldn't happen in Australia. I would say that the Australian government, and working with our allies offshore, has invested in helping educate the owners of critical infrastructure on how to secure these industrial control systems to reduce the likelihood of things going wrong. Given the size of the networks, the scale of the networks and the ever-changing nature of them, it's a bit like the Harbour Bridge. You start painting at one end and by the time you're finished, you start painting it again.
In Las Vegas, the hacking conference came to a dramatic close with a major milestone in the evolution of cybersecurity.
Welcome everyone to the first ever fully automated cybersecurity automated competition, the Cyber Grand Challenge.
Sponsored by the US Department of Defense, a major new hacking competition has redefined the landscape again.
Serious science, the winning team will take home the top prize of $2 million. We now have 7 finalists who will compete here today using automated systems designed to hunt for vulnerabilities and search for weaknesses on competitors' systems.
This team of developers has designed an artificial intelligence that could take cyber warfare to new levels. It's called Mayhem.
Right now, a lot of the computer security mechanisms we have are really about a person on a keyboard, and that's just too slow. So they put out a grand challenge. Can we have a fully automated attack and defense system? And that's what this week is about. That's what this challenge is about. Can we build fully automatic robot computers that can hack and defend against being hacked?
See what's going on. Let's progress the game.
It looks like, again, it's still a very close game.
All right, so Mayhem and Rubius are battling for the lead, and
These machines on stage are firing off cyber attacks against each other, and they're doing it without any humans involved.
Scoreboard 7, we will actually see Mayhem overtake Rubius to take first place.
all right, let's see scoreboard 7. What is that coming on? I'm excited here.
And now the winner of the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge for All Secure and their bot Mayhem.
Technology has brought us together in new ways, but it's exposing us to dangers we're only beginning to see.
The internet was never designed to actually be secure, right? So we're fighting an almost untenable problem space. We're realizing that we've created so much technology, we've created technology faster than we have the ability to secure it as human beings.